The movie opens with a fascinating scene where the protagonist Joe awakens in an unfamiliar, confined space. He is baffled and disoriented, with no memory of how he arrived in this mysterious room. Panic sets in as he calls out for assistance, only to be harshly silenced by a voice coming from an air vent. This voice belongs to another prisoner, who advises Joe to keep quiet. As he teeters on the brink of depression, he notices a glimmer of hope, the sound of whistling outside. Someone is delivering food and water through a slot in the door. Joe rushes to the door, pleading for help. He urgently explains his situation, revealing that he has a pregnant wife who needs him. However, his pleas fall on deaf ears as the mysterious figure carelessly shuts the slot. Suddenly, a light illuminates the wall, and an artificial intelligence voice chillingly welcomes Joe to an advanced career training program. Confused and desperate for answers, Joe begs for more information. However, his inquiries are met with hostility from the other occupants, who are trying to sleep. The neighbor in the adjacent cell reveals a shocking truth. They are all employees of Mallard, the very company Joe worked for, who ended up here due to conflicts with the company. As Joe processes this unsettling revelation, he attempts to rest. However, his sleep is short-lived, disturbed by strange noises in the night. The following morning, a guard arrives with more food and issues a stern warning. The cells must be immaculately maintained or severe punishment will ensue. Joe discovers a crude toilet hole for waste disposal. Soon after, Joe makes a horrifying discovery: a human skull buried beneath the dirt. His neighbor confirms his worst fears. Employees have indeed died in this grim place. Joe struggles to comprehend how such atrocities could go unnoticed, but the neighbor explains that the deadly clause was hidden in the fine print of their employment contracts, a detail overlooked by many. This revelation underscores the sinister nature of the company and sets the stage for the harrowing events that unfold in the movie. A tense and thought-provoking moment unfolds as the AI begins to address Joe, who, in a mix of frustration and disbelief, confronts it. Joe, having dedicated a decade of his life to the company, feels a sense of betrayal and argues that his long service merits better treatment. However, the AI, unmoved by Joe's emotional outburst, informs him that his advanced career training seminar is about to commence. The AI coldly explains the rationale behind this drastic measure. Joe's productivity had noticeably declined in recent months, and his frequent usage of personal time contributed to the downturn in his department's performance. This training is supposedly designed to reshape Joe into a model employee. The schedule is grueling. The workday spans from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., during which Joe is required to push a mill. Each complete rotation of the mill earns him 1 point, with a daily target of 50 rotations. Failure to meet this quota results in punishment. Adding to the pressure, the AI reveals a chilling rule. At the end of each day, the employee with the least points will be terminated, regardless of whether they met the daily target. Overwhelmed by this revelation, Joe pleads for understanding, desperately mentioning his pregnant wife and his need to return home. But his neighboring inmate tells Joe that such appeals are pointless. The only option is to work and focus on survival. Resigned to his fate, Joe begins his laborious task at the mill. He spends the entire day pushing the mill tirelessly, sustained only by small rations. As night falls and Joe tries to rest, the haunting reality of their situation echoes through the facility. The sound of the day's terminated employee, chosen for scoring the lowest points, serves as a grim reminder of the brutal system they are trapped in. This scene showcases the movie's dark exploration of corporate dehumanization and the struggle for survival in an uncaring system. The following morning marks a new day of grueling labor for Joe. As he eats his ration breakfast, he engages in a conversation with his neighboring prisoner. Joe questions the logic behind the quota system, especially when meeting the quota doesn't guarantee safety from being terminated. His neighbor grimly responds, pointing out that merely being good enough is never sufficient for Mallard, their ruthless employer. Joe then pushes himself, finishing his exhausting workday with an impressive quota of 150. Day after day, he works relentlessly at the mill, an endeavor that is both monotonous and physically draining under the relentless sun. In his moments of break, Joe finds comfort in talking to his neighbor, who reveals a demoralizing truth: the mill's operation is pointless, serving no purpose other than to keep them laboring endlessly. After a grueling day, Joe collapses from sheer exhaustion, having achieved an extraordinary quota of 370. The AI's congratulatory message offers no comfort. In a brief moment of respite, Joe's attention is drawn to a carving on the mill's handle, the name Alex. Curious, He inquires about it with his neighbor and learns of Alex, the sole individual known to have escaped their prison. The following day brings a hollow reward for Joe's extraordinary effort, a pen engraved with his name. Disgusted by the meaningless gesture and realizing it's of no practical use, Joe's frustration mounts when he discovers his daily quota has been permanently raised to 370. Outraged and displaying his blistered, injured hands, he argues the impossibility of repeating such a high score. However, the AI's response is cold and calculated, stating that humans merely require a little push to achieve progress. In a fit of anger and despair, Joe throws the pen against the wall, cursing the company for its inhumanity. This scene deeply underscores the movie's themes of corporate exploitation and the relentless pressure to exceed unreasonable expectations, often at great personal cost. As the plot continues, Joe's situation takes a turn for the worse. As he resumes his tiresome work at the mill, he realizes that his efforts are not being counted as they should. For every complete revolution of the mill, which used to earn him a point, he now sees an X mark on the clock. His neighbor, seasoned in the ways of this cruel system, explains that the X signifies a penalty. Under this harsh rule, Joe must now complete 2 revolutions to earn a single point. Faced with this daunting new challenge, Joe understands that he must do a staggering 740 revolutions to meet his daily quota. Despite his best efforts, Joe's body and spirit are pushed to their limits. Eventually, overwhelmed by exhaustion, he collapses, unable to continue. The neighbor, upon learning of Joe's uphill task, becomes frantic, fearing that Joe's failure could spell doom for them all. At the end of the workday, the AI confirms Joe's failure to meet the quota. In desperation, Joe inquires about the penalty, only to be told that he brought it upon himself by failing his colleagues. The AI, manipulative and cruel, decides to exploit Joe's deepest fear by threatening to bring his wife Kate to this hellish place as well. Distraught and terrified at the thought of Kate suffering the same fate, Joe pleads for mercy and vows to meet the new quota. The AI, seemingly satisfied with Joe's commitment, adds another layer of torment by installing a glaring red light in his cell, making it nearly impossible for him to rest. The following day, Joe, fueled by fear and determination, pushes himself beyond human limits. In a grueling test of endurance, he manages to meet the quota just as time expires. The AI announces the removal of the penalty and the red light vanishes, offering Joe a momentary break from the relentless torture. The next morning, the AI presents Joe with a bittersweet symbol of appreciation, a brief video of Kate in the hospital with their newborn baby. Overcome with emotion, Joe weeps at the sight, mourning the precious moments he's missing with his family. Emboldened by this glimpse of his loved ones, Joe decides to explore the possibility of escape. He asks his neighbor about Alex, the only person known to have escaped. Initially reluctant, the neighbor's resolve softens upon hearing Joe's heartfelt craving to meet his child. Moved by Joe's situation, he reveals a potential escape route, a blind spot behind a pillar in the wall, giving Joe a glimmer of hope in an otherwise hopeless situation. Joe, ignited by his newfound determination to escape, rushes to inspect the wall closely. His keen observation reveals a circular area that appears to have been filled in later, indicating that someone had previously made a hole there. Seizing the pen he had received earlier, Joe begins the painstaking task of digging into the wall. Over the following days, Joe's resolve never diminishes. Despite his growing exhaustion, he diligently meets his daily quota at the mill, and then devotes every spare moment to his secret endeavor, excavating the hole. His efforts finally pay off when the hole becomes large enough for him to pass through. He eagerly crawls into the opening, emerging into a dark, unfamiliar area. But his hope of freedom is short-lived. Suddenly, a guard discovers him. In the ensuing moment, Joe is knocked unconscious. When Joe regains consciousness, he finds himself back in his original room with the mill. The vault he worked so hard to create has been sealed, erasing all evidence of his attempt to escape. The AI, embodying the company's ruthless authority, begins to criticize him. As punishment for his transgression, the quota is drastically increased to an impossible 1,000. To Joe's horror, the neighbor, his confidant and ally, suffers a cruel fate at the hands of the guard. His leg is broken, rendering him unable to work. Amidst this turmoil, the neighbor, in a moment of despair, mentions that reasoning with an AI is pointless, as it is governed solely by algorithms. However, this revelation sparks a bold idea in Joe. He theorizes that if no one works and everyone ends the day with 0 points, the system's rules might prevent any terminations due to a tie. Though the neighbor is skeptical, Recognizing the danger of such a plan, Joe is convinced. They have nothing left to lose. Climbing atop the mill, Joe delivers an impassioned speech to his fellow captives. He argues that their hard work will never be rewarded by the company, and if they collectively refuse to work, they might avoid the fatal consequence of being the day's lowest score. As Joe's words resonate with the other employees, a united front forms. The workday begins, but not a single person engages in labor. Joe's plan seems to be working, and a sense of victory begins to take hold. However, as the day nears its end, the AI coldly announces a horrifying new rule. Anyone who fails to earn any points will be terminated. This cruel twist shatters the fleeting hope that Joe and the others had clung to, demonstrating the relentless and merciless nature of the system that holds them captive. In this harrowing segment, the employees, paralyzed by fear at the AI's brutal announcement, hastily resume their work, turning a deaf ear to Joe's desperate pleas not to give in. Amidst this chaos, the neighbor, who had been a source of support and wisdom for Joe, shares an emotional message. He admires Joe's determination and love for his child, urging him to do whatever it takes to escape and meet his baby. Left with no viable alternatives, Joe, heavy-hearted, begins to push the mill once more. In the quiet of the night, a profound and shocking revelation comes to light. The neighbor, believed to be just another prisoner, confesses that he is actually Deluxe, the only known escapee from this nightmarish facility. Recaptured just like Joe, Deluxe had returned to this hellish existence. He had concealed his identity, hoping to instill a sense of hope in Joe for a possible second attempt at escape. In a moment of heartbreaking farewell, Joe listens helplessly as Deluxe, his mentor and friend, is taken away for termination. The following morning brings another hollow gift from the AI to Joe, a brief video of his wife Kate and their newborn baby. This reminder of the life he's missing ignites a fury in Joe. He lashes out verbally at the company, an act of defiance against the oppressive system. The AI, displeased with Joe's outburst, coldly decides that Joe too should be terminated. As the door opens, a group of emotionless people enters the room, ignoring Joe's frantic questions and pleas. The tension escalates when the guard prepares to administer a lethal injection. A sudden revelation about the possible fate of his home and family in the event of his death sends Joe into a rage. He attacks the guard, a chaotic scene unfolding as blood stains the indifferent onlookers. In the midst of this violence, the AI makes a chilling announcement. The guard has failed and will be terminated, and Joe, by carrying out this act, is deemed worthy of promotion to level 9. This revelation halts Joe in his tracks. Horrified at what he's become in the heat of the moment, he recoils, declaring he is not a monster. Refusing to be further dehumanized by the company, Joe makes a defiant stand. He quits, a powerful assertion of his humanity in the face of a system designed to strip it away. This moment deeply captures the struggle between survival and retaining one's humanity under extreme duress. In a startling twist in the plot, Joe's reality is abruptly shifted. He finds himself back in a familiar office setting, not the oppressive environment of the mill. To his astonishment, he discovers a device attached to his head, and around him, other employees are similarly equipped. This shocking revelation unfolds. Everything Joe has endured was part of the company's advanced career training simulation. A colleague nearby informs him that, although it felt like an eternity, Joe had only been in the simulation for 60 minutes. Joe learns that he had actually volunteered for this experimental program. What he experienced as a prolonged and harrowing nightmare was, in fact, an illusion, a mere simulation. Before this experiment, Joe had been stuck at level 8 in his career, seemingly unable to advance further. The reason, it turns out, wasn't a lack of capability on his part, but rather a lack of opportunity to truly demonstrate his potential. The simulation was designed to push Joe to his limits and beyond. In this artificial environment, his productivity skyrocketed, and his leadership qualities shone brightly. These remarkable achievements in the simulated world translated into real-world success. Joe was now eligible for the promotion to level 9 that had previously eluded him. Upon being disconnected from the machine, Joe is escorted to his new office. However, the experience has profoundly changed him. Despite his promotion, the realization of the company's manipulative and unethical tactics leaves a bitter taste. In a defiant and climactic moment, as the movie draws to a close, Joe declares his intention to burn this company to the ground. This bold statement marks a complete transformation in Joe's character, from a dedicated employee to a determined challenger of the very system that sought to control him. The movie ends on this note of rebellion, leaving us to ponder the ethics of corporate manipulation and the true cost of success in such an environment.